Yeah, I just won't let me do access my email from the internet.
I've had that same question. Like,
that may be what you're getting at.
Yeah, maybe.
Hi, Eric.
Hi, Nat.
All right, so let's get started then with number one. I'm sorry, Eric and Mike, that my email with attachments didn't come through. A lot of them are stuff that you already have with regard to the CRF request forms and things like that. And the first item that I have here is local government support from CRF. I made a mistake. I called it the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act. It's actually the CARES Act. The state anticipates distributing $50 million or less in a first phase of reimbursing local governments for a period of time between March 1st and May 15th, 2020. There are three documents that I brought to everyone's attention there. One's a CRF request form, which where we can list out our reimbursable expenses. There's a letter from the governor, and then there's an agreement that we would need to sign that says that we understand that we're complying with the rules that the federal government has come up with regard to eligible expenses. And before I turn it over to everybody else for discussion, I will say that I looked up guidance on what payroll expenses are considered to be eligible, and there's incredibly broad guidance on that. And I'll read it as follows, and I hadn't sent that out yet because I just found it. It says the fund is designed to provide ready funding to address unforeseen financial needs and risks created by COVID-19. For this reason, as a matter of administrative convenience in light of the emergency nature of this program, a state, territorial, local, or tribal government may presume that payroll costs for public health and public safety employees are payments for services substantially dedicated to mitigating or responding to the COVID-19 public health emergency, unless the chief executive or equivalent of the relevant government determines that specific circumstances indicate otherwise. So essentially they're saying public safety, public health, reimbursable, unless you take it upon yourself to say that you don't think they should be, which is very strange but very broad guidance, and that's a very large. There's going to be a lot of potential reimbursement there, and I wanted to point that out.
Well, if there's
I thought I heard someone comment there, so.
No, we're happy with that determination.
Yeah, and so the only issue really here is that we got to turn this around pretty quick, and our finance director isn't on the phone here, but I had a conversation with her, and she proposed sending something out to all county department heads, asking them with the spreadsheet showing what reimbursable expenses are, and asking them to provide feedback as soon as possible, is my understanding. And of course, I would help, put that together. As far as payroll, that can be determined pretty quickly for that time period, and it is very broad. So we don't have to make an individual determination for each employee. We can just say if you're a public health employee, for example, we're putting those costs on there. That's what the guidance says, and it would be hard to get in and determine every person and how much time they spent. So that's very helpful.
Right. She offered to do that for every department, but then I believe Coos Health and Wellness is already tracking theirs, so theirs could be collected separately.
Tracking all their expenses.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and my thought would be that there might be some other departments that have incurred expenses, but they haven't been as fastidious in documentation. But there's no reason that that should keep us from documenting that now and submitting those costs, as long as we can back it up.
Now, what was that time period?
The time period is March 1st to today. and we're looking to get this turned around by the end of next week, I believe, is the time. So we have a little time.
Well, and Commissioner Sweet, I don't know. From what I
Yeah.
heard on that phone call today, I don't know how much time we should spend on this right now until the E-Board meets this afternoon.
That's a good point. Yeah, we should know pretty quickly here, but were you anticipating doing any work on it today,
No,
Matt?
I was not. I was anticipating starting up on this probably Monday, and that is certainly in line with whatever decision might be coming down later today that I'm not aware of. So.
Okay.
So it just sounded like the E-Board was still up in the air a little bit about how they were going to allocate that funding. That it's not, that's the recommendation from the governor's office, but I think it's still a decision of the E-Board. So, yeah, we'll know by this afternoon. I was just thinking we don't want to send an email out to department heads saying do it this way and then have to turn around and tell them to do it a different way on Monday morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we don't have to start on today, we'll be okay.
If you tell me I can start something on Monday and it's opposed to today, I'm usually not going to argue with that. So.
Okay, but you have nothing to argue about.
Perfect.
As hard as that might be for an attorney.
No, I'm one of the rare attorneys who doesn't like to argue.
I know.
Or lie, actually, so it's kind of weird.
Well, that's a bad one there.
All right, so any further discussion?
Nope. No, thank you for bringing this up, or bringing it to our attention.
Oh, no problem. And also, I will say that Public Health and Coos Health and Wellness have been on top of this too. And I received these forms and was sitting there thinking about what to do, and then they sent them to me. So they act more decisively than I do, I think. Number 2 is, and I don't know if this is a big discussion item, but it was forwarded to me. There's an upcoming FEMA applicant briefing that's being held by the Office of Emergency Management. It's a call-in. It's May 20th, 2020, and the information on that is in the stuff that I sent out, and you can submit questions to them a day in advance for them to answer. So I just distributed that. I don't know if there's any discussion that needs to happen, but people can chime in if they'd like.
Okay, thanks for that.
All right. So number 3, we're moving through this quick. A discussion with regard to Phase 1 reopening. I just wanted to bring this up because there's been a number of questions regarding how it will impact county operations and how we are doing things, for example, around the courthouse with our restrictions on courthouse access. There have been people who've asked about whether they should continue to allow people to telecommute or telework if they can. And as far as I know right now we have a policy in place that is good for as long as our emergency declaration is in place, that will remain unchanged even as Phase 1 is implemented, which is more impactful, in my opinion, on businesses that are being allowed to essentially catch up to where we already are in the fact that we are still operating. We just have certain social distancing measures in place. And I think our personnel policy and the way we've been encouraging telework is still going to be effective in Phase 1. But I just wanted to know if there's any other perspectives on that.
I think we're doing a pretty
Matt,
good
this
job.
is
I don't
Paul
know that I have
Fraser. Can
anything
you
I
hear me?
want to take away, and I'm not thinking of anything to add.
And Paul, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I was just going to bring up, I know from talking with Judge Stone that the court is, we're anticipating later today or tonight that there's going to be an amended order from the Chief Justice. And in talking with Judge Stone, we believe that the amended order is going to open the courts back up to business starting June 1, except for jury trials. So I know this is probably good news for Bob since he has jury duty in June. there'll be no jury trials in June, but we're going to be doing motions, arraignments, sentencings, getting grand jury back online, and so forth. And so I'm thinking of starting June 1 that I'm probably going to need people. I mean, since the court's going to be back up to business as usual, except for jury trials, that I'm probably going to recall everybody starting June 1.
And I think that would be appropriate under the policy that we have in place, because basically we've given broad discretion to the department heads, elected officials in charge of offices and departments to decide whether telework is appropriate for their employees and whether they can pull it off. And if you're getting an increase in your workload and people needing to be there for these court appearances more and more frequently, then that's would justify changing who you're allowing to work from home because of the change in circumstances. So it kind of makes sense to me.
Well, that's just what I'm thinking. But I mean, if I have a couple of employees that say, absolutely not, I don't feel safe, that type of thing, I'm not going to be, Mr. I don't care what you think, you're coming to work. I will try to show some discretion.
Yeah. All right. Any other comments? All right. So moving on to item number 4, which is a proposed extension of the county's emergency declaration. The county, in order 20-03049L, declared a state of emergency in Coos County for 60 days. That's set to expire. Order 20-05026L would extend it for another 60 days and would and that's about it. It would extend our previous emergency declaration for another 60 days. I think it's important to note that extending the emergency declaration does not, it doesn't mean that, we're not going to go through phased reopening if that's appropriate and approved. It means that, we have a declared state of emergency in the county, and that's about it. Just for clarification, it doesn't have an impact on those other things that we may or may not choose to do.
I move that we approve Order 20-05-026L.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those
For
in favor?
long? Yeah.
Nat, how long is that for?
It's for another 60 days. That was the duration of our first one. That would put it out it would go to July 15th. And the governor recently extended for 60 days, and I think that ends maybe the 6th, so a little bit before ours. We could tie ours to the governor's, but I just went with 60 days. That's what we did last time. So.
All right. It's important that we have the flexibility to take care of this.
I think I'd like to have a review at the end of this month.
Well,
That's 2 weeks from now.
And the order does provide that at any point the Board of Commissioners can shorten that period. So it's for 60 days unless earlier terminated. So we could approve it the 60 days and certainly have a discussion in 2 weeks about whether it needs to go forward. But I will note that, having a declaration in place is something that is often critical for obtaining funding. And as long as we're maintaining a, public health and emergency operations response, then typically that order is something that is necessary.
Okay.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
See what you started, Melissa?
I know. I was thinking there might be some more discussion.
Premature eyes. Now you've got to live with it.
Move things along. I get it. All right. Nat?
All right, so number 5, and I received this, I think, yesterday, and I haven't had the chance to review thoroughly. I also forwarded it to Paul Frazier a couple hours ago, and I don't know if he's had the chance to review or not, but the Oregon Department of Corrections has apparently adopted a plan for screening, notification, and release of inmates who are suspected or do have COVID-19. And so I don't know if you had a chance to look at that, Paul.
Well, I have looked at it. I've seen this before. They put this plan out. You'll notice it's dated mid-April.
I didn't know if that was a mistake or not.
No, that plan was in place, and it actually was in place when the inmate in question was released from Shutter Creek that was COVID positive, and nobody seemed to know about it. So, which got us started on. I put forward a plan which I sent to them, which was subsequent to this plan that they had already in place. And I haven't heard back from them. I've got an email in to the general counsel about, hey, where are you guys at on this? But I wanted to bring it up this morning, but I had technological problems. But there was an article last night on Oregon Live, and it pertained to this lawsuit that's going on right now where inmates' rights group is asking for an injunction against the Department of Corrections to force them to release 6,000 prisoners so they can have social distancing. And in that article, they quoted from 2 different Shutter Creek inmates. They were named. And one said that he was refusing to be tested for the virus because he is around here. He's a Coos County case. His family, it's easier for them to come and visit. He's afraid if he tests and is positive, they're going to ship him off to Coffee Creek, and then he won't have visitation with his family and so forth. So he's refusing to take the test. But then there's another inmate that they quoted, named him, and he claims that he's been or was sick for about 3 weeks inside the facility, but he made no complaints about it, and again was refusing to be tested for similar reasons, that he feels that if I get tested and it turns out I'm positive, they're going to ship me off, I'm going to lose privileges, this and that and the other. And so they're using prisoner fear of loss of privileges to refuse to take the test. And I thought I'd just bring it up because people are going to read that and they're going to want to know what the hell's going on at Shutters Creek again. But there we are.
Well, and and I wasn't aware of this plan that was in place when we had these issues, because theoretically we should have been informed even under that plan before an individual was released. But and so the state is. Do you have any knowledge of whether they're looking at what they can do to ensure that people are being tested if they need to be tested? Or?
Well, from what I'm hearing is that if they believe they do not have the authority to force an inmate to take the test. So if the inmate says, I'm not doing it, they believe they don't have the authority to do that. And so in the article, it talked about how the Department of Corrections was saying, we don't have the authority to make them take the test. And there was some intimation about, well, maybe we need to have a legislative fix. Well, that's not going to happen in the immediate near future, so we're kind of in that situation. The plan I put forward was pretty much identical to what they had in place, except for we now know through community corrections who's coming out, so we know who's coming out. The question that I wanted, and I think what public health wanted, was that Okay, before they leave the facility, there would be some sort of contact with the prisoner coming back to Coos County with the Public Health Department. The Department of Corrections would assist or facilitate in making sure there's some sort of contact with the Public Health Department and the prisoner, or I should say adult in custody, so that if there is a concern, as soon as the person comes up, then we can move immediately towards making sure that person voluntarily quarantines or whatever. That's the only really big difference between the two plans that I can see. But like I say, I haven't heard back from them, and it's been almost 2 weeks now.
Any further discussion on that from on the public health side?
Not really, as far as we've had issues obviously in the past with the whole thing, but Brian seems to have a better working knowledge of the process right now, and a little bit more communication with Shutter Creek as like from the inside.
Okay, so that is good. And as I recall from our previous conversations, I think we had some time before there was another release scheduled from Shutters Creek. So hopefully the state will, within that time frame at least, get back to Paul. Though who knows?
Well, I hope so. But that Shutters Creek's not the only prison that has COVID in it and has Coos County inmates. I mean, for example, the penitentiary in Salem, I believe we have one or had one this month that was being released from the penitentiary. And if I read the numbers right in the article yesterday, COVID's taken off inside the walls of the penitentiary. So I think we also need to be concerned about people being released from the penitentiary that are positive. Well, they're in that situation there that we should also be concerned about inmates being released back to Coos County out of the state pen.
This is Eric. Yeah, I know that Brian was actually going to go visit or speak with the individual in question that had been released on the 11th that is currently housed at the mission.
This procedure is only in place if COVID has been found to be in the correctional facility.
That's my understanding, yes. And my last time I looked, there's only, not counting the two prisons that have the hospital beds where they're sending the inmates to, and that's Coffee Creek on this side of the Cascades. Anybody in a facility on this side of the Cascades that's test positive for COVID goes to Coffee Creek. On the west side of the Cascades, they're going to Snake River. So outside of those two, there's four others, and that's the Penitentiary, Shutters Creek, Sandy Am Correctional, which is in Salem, and then Two Rivers Correctional Institute, which is in Umatilla County.
Okay. Any further discussion on this?
None from me. So I think we can move on to item number 6 that I added in. This is with regard to the fairgrounds. A discussion regarding when they might be open to the public and whether individuals would be allowed to camp there. This question was asked by Darius, who is on the fair board. Darius Boudelaire.
If Darius is in the meeting, he can present this. If not, I'll do it.
He is not here.
He's not? Okay. And I don't know what action we need to take, but the Fair Board is interested in being able to provide space, as they do occasionally, venues for weddings and other gatherings. And so I don't know, I assume that's allowed under phase one.
Depends on how large the gathering is.
Yeah, we'd have to be, and of course, anything they do would be subject to the limitations ordered by the state. And I don't know whether we need to take an action or just be aware that they will be doing this.
I would think it's within the discretion of the fair board, but perhaps they just want to, like you said, know that there isn't a strong opinion to the contrary.
So unless I hear otherwise, then from the board, I'll tell them that they're free to go ahead and do this, provided that whoever's using the venue complies with state guidance.
And the other thing I would say is that I'll try to remember to tell Darius this, but I'm letting you know, John, too, just in case I get preoccupied with something else. But it would be good if they could get me whatever agreements they might normally have with regard to renting out a venue, so that we can put some terms in with regard to, our expectations about compliance with the governor's order, so that then it's on them as far as complying.
That's a great suggestion. I'll pass it on to him, but I'm subject to the same lapses that you yourself are being a subject to. So between the two of us, we'll get the word to him. Maybe he'll get it twice. And then the other issue was he anticipates, he's hoping that we'll be able to, although not put on the fair as we know it, we'll still be able to do the livestock show and auction, and he's anticipating that people will want perhaps to come camp at the fairgrounds as they normally do during the fair, and is asking if that's okay, and then he has some questions here regarding should we limit it to self-contained RVs only and close the restrooms. I think both are probably very, very good precautions. And, of course, distancing, I don't see any reason to crowd people together. I don't think we'll have the same crowds for that we do for fair. So unless someone has some different thoughts on that, I would encourage them to provide extra distance between RVs, make it available to self-contained RVs only, and public restrooms. Another question. I don't quite know what they have in mind yet. I think it's all going. The auction would be online. If it's not online, I think it would be necessary to have the public restrooms available. Any comments on that?
I feel like they can use their best judgment on this one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll pass that on then. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so I have nothing else on my list. If there's any miscellaneous topics that need to be discussed, this would be the time.
I have one thing I'd like to bring up, and maybe this is something we could deal with on Monday, give ourselves a little time to think about it. I know we're already getting a lot of questions from individuals and businesses and churches about what they should or should not do under Phase 1. And I fear that if anyone in the county that happens to get such a question were to answer it, we might be giving differing answers to different people for the same question. And I'm wondering if it might be nice to adopt a protocol to route all such questions through public health. And we don't have to act on that today, but if you want to give that some consideration and deal with it Monday, fine. If you want to deal today, that's fine too.
This is Melissa. I know this is a sensitive topic for everyone. Honestly, they made us remove all sector guidance from our reopening plan because Oregon Health Authority wants to handle all that. And I know it's not best customer service, but if that's the route the state wants to go, I've been redirecting people to Oregon Health Authority when they have
Oh,
questions.
okay.
And I don't know what everybody else has been doing, but I feel like if they're telling us to take the sector guidance out of our plan and, they're going to handle all that, I don't know how in good faith, unless we're checking the sector guidance every day and making sure we know the most recent changes to it, I don't know how we can answer people.
Well, that's a good point. Do we have good contact information we could give them along with telling them to contact OHA?
They have a website that I've been directing people to. Nat, do you know anything different?
No, I don't have a good contact other than, I would think it would be a good idea to direct them to the web link where the sector guidance is posted, and they can just read it there, and I'm sure we can find a contact if we need to.
Then do we need to bring public health into this conversation? Because I know that Eric has said that they're trying to familiarize themselves with the different sector protocols so that they are in a position to answer. So if this is the county's position, we ought to include them in that as well, I assume, unless they could act as an extension of OHA.
I don't know. It's just, for me, I had a little frustration with, we were getting differing guidance on retail as things were evolving. I feel like the state is evolving it quickly enough that they need to be the ones that are providing guidance. But I'm totally comfortable with having a discussion with public health, and I think they will get the questions. I just feel like if we're not the lead regulatory authority, then I'm hesitant for us to give people guidance that could potentially be trouble.
Well, I think that's a good idea. I just want to make sure that everyone who's likely to get a question is aware of whatever protocol we choose. And I certainly think your suggestion of referring questions to OHA is a very appropriate one.
We have to direct them to a specific site. I've been looking through here since we've been talking, and it's just a rat maze going through stuff. We need a specific spot where they can go and look up most of the questions they have.
Yeah, I wonder if OHA would consider having kind of a point person to whom questions could be asked, and then that person could direct whoever has the question to the appropriate person within OHA. I just want to kind of make it not too complicated for our citizens and businesses.
They should go directly to a site which has most of the answers for them. And then,
Alex Campbell keeps sending it out every day.
yeah, I haven't been real keen on Alex's answers because they're sometimes really vague.
Yeah. Okay. I've found him to be responsive when I've had specific questions. I've had to ask him a few times specific questions about, that I've gotten from businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not inclined to interpret the regulations myself. What I've done is if a specific business asks me a question, I'll reach out to Alex specifically, or I've also redirected them to, there's a coronavirus information page where it gives all the sector guidance and all that. Just because I don't want us to get in a position where we're interpreting the law for someone and we interpret it incorrectly.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely appropriate. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page and that and public health along with us is on that page.
John, this is Eric. We have to hop off to go do our press briefing, but all of the OHA guidances are being linked through our website as well, so that we can ensure that everybody's funneled in the right direction.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Very
That sounds good.
That's satisfied.
there you go. We'll just redirect them to Coos Health and Wellness.
Yep.
We just want to make sure people are getting the best possible information.
Well, is that the answer? I don't know if I understood that quite right. If we redirect them to, if we redirect a question to Coos Health and Wellness, who again will redirect them, it seems like we're getting into a runaround.
Well, John, I think that the conclusion is that, or maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I think it is that we can get them to a direct link, either to an individual at the Oregon Health Authority if they need to talk to somebody, or the guidance itself. And the guidance either speaks for itself, or someone needs to interpret it, and the person interpreting it isn't going to be us. So
Right.
as long as we get them those direct links to the up-to-date guidance, that's as good as we can do.
Okay.
Here's reopening guidance on their website. So under novel coronavirus 2019 COVID-19.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we have anything else?
Nope.
All
Oh,
right.
John,
Yeah.
I heard that the Forest Service is opening up the dunes.
Oh, yeah, they are. I guess I brought that up at the roundtable. I had a call this morning saying that at noon today they will open the gates at Spin Reel and at Hauser.
They didn't
None of the
mention
campground facilities, none of their parking facilities, I guess, would be available. None of the restrooms.
Okay.
I passed
Good.
that on to
Good news.
Spin Reel and to Todd and asked them to disseminate the information among their friends that are in the businesses of catering to the Dunes people.
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other updates? Okay, then we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.